Shalom, welcome to Out of Africa Torah Session. My name is Tatra Cohen, and this week we are yet on another interesting Torah portion, and this is none other than Vayera. He appeared, of course, coming from the book of Parashat, the book of Genesis. Well, I should also mention that we are blessed with much rain as we are experiencing, and my prayer is it will be another year of abundance. We prayed for rain, and there is. It's actually much earlier than it is supposedly, especially in many parts here in Zimbabwe. Well, when you look at this Torah portion, I'm glad to mention that previously we looked on the mystical side of this Torah portion when we discussed a number of things, the appearance of these three men and what they did, who they were, and so forth. But today, I just want us to look at two conflicting models on how to deal with such instances or similar events as one may face in life. Now, on the first one, you would see Abram's response to the destruction or to the news about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And he was quick to act upon the news. And the way he acted was more of an intercessor trying to navigate his way to find how he would convince the living God over the issue of the salvation, perhaps the deliverance of Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, we see the two negotiating, bringing all kinds of facts. And when he is negotiating, we see him tapping more, especially into the attributes or the attributes of mercy which are embedded within the character of the living God. With that being said, the second model which is conflicting to this is that event which we see later on when Avram receives the news about or the commandment to sacrifice his only son. Well, this came, rather very harsh to someone who had a personal relationship with God. If you have been considered a friend of God or someone with that proximity to the living God, it is rather very harsh, receiving such news. But then Abraham did not think twice about it. He did not even wish to negotiate like he did earlier on. This time, he immediately acted upon it. And therefore, the rabbis give us this notion or the biblical principle which we find today. Obey God or question God. It seems we're faced, with a choice each and every day. At first, Avram questioned God. You who is righteous, you who is the captain of justice, should you destroy both the righteous and the unrighteous? Of course, he went on and all his questions were answered. And eventually, destruction came upon Sodom and Gomorrah. But in this later, event, we see that Abraham did not even question. Perhaps he learned about questioning God. But in any case, the rabbis tell us that these two conflicting models of how Abraham dealt with these predicaments actually help us to understand the nature of God. That when it comes to justice, God does not just, judge without giving you a chance. Perhaps you might be delivered in your own verdict. And that's exactly what we see today. The justice of God. God is so just to the point that should you have any query regarding the judgment which has passed upon you or anything that may have to do with life, He too also extend an opportunity. Perhaps you may be able to redeem yourself. What a wonderful, what a considerate God whom we serve to this day. So today when we look at God, He's not just passing judgment. At times He delays judgment because of how good He is, the nature of God, the slow to anger, the attributes of mercy which we see mentioned throughout the scripture about the living God. are actually seen in light of justice, in light of how God bring about justice. Justice is the nature of God, is the character of God, is the attribute of God. It's not, the way we perceive it here. And for God, it's even worse because He tries by all means not to pass judgment. Unless otherwise, there is no response from the recipient. So this is my short message to you. Should you question God? Should you, or rather, obey what God says? When those who are not of faith look at what God does, sometimes they think He does not give us an opportunity to question what He does. But sometimes it's of no value, because when you question what He has done, chances are very high that you will not win the case. Like in the case of Abraham. Of course, Abraham was a great intercessor and a great prophet. No wonder at the end, Lot and his family were able to be saved. But the fate of Sodom and Gomorrah were determined, and there was no merit found, to obviate this destruction which had already been declared upon them. In other words, God gives us chance, to redeem oneself. So go with this question. You rather ask God, you rather question God, you rather put God to task, or else do it the easier way, which Abraham did in the letter. He just chose to obey, and God was very pleased with that. When He saw, at that very moment when God was sure that Abraham has proven himself that he will obey God, that's when the ram was provided, which was later sacrificed in the place of Isaac. Shalom, Shabbat Shalom.